Ladies and gentlemen, there is something profoundly courageous, no, heroic, about a woman who walks alone. A woman who, in defiance of tradition, expectation, and the relentless pressure of convention, chooses a path that is not paved by the comfort of a partner, a husband, or societal approval. Now, I'm not here to say that marriage is obsolete or unimportant. Quite the opposite. It's one of the oldest and most stabilizing institutions we've built as human beings. But what I am saying, what we often forget, is that the absence of a husband does not equate to the absence of purpose or strength or value. A woman who walks alone does not walk empty. She walks carrying the weight of her own potential, and that is no trivial burden. She walks not because she has to, but because she chooses to. And that choice, voluntary confrontation with chaos, isolation, uncertainty, is precisely where meaning is found. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the domain of the heroic. So today, let us explore not just the challenge, but the moral grandeur of such a woman. A woman who chooses to walk alone without the guiding hand of a partner must develop a profound sense of self-reliance. Self-reliance is not merely the absence of dependency on others, but an active choice to trust in one's own abilities, judgment, and instincts to navigate life's trials. It is the foundation upon which she builds her strength, resilience, and capacity for growth. In a world where relationships, particularly marriage, are often seen as the primary means through which individuals find security and validation, self-reliance offers a radical and empowering alternative. The concept of self-reliance goes beyond simply doing things by oneself. It speaks to the very essence of personal autonomy, the ability to make decisions, to act independently, to face the inevitable challenges of life without waiting for external validation or support. In a society that often pressures women to define their worth through their roles in relationships or families, walking alone allows a woman to escape these imposed definitions and find her own sense of value. It's the realization that her worth is not contingent upon the presence of a husband, partner, or even family. Instead, it resides within her own capacity to face adversity, to persevere, and to carve out a path that is uniquely hers. When a woman walks alone, she is compelled to engage with the world in a way that requires deep self-trust. She must learn to rely on her judgment, her instincts, and her intellect. She cannot afford to lean on the decisions or the presence of others to validate her choices. Whether it is deciding on a career path, managing finances, or navigating the emotional ups and downs of life, the responsibility for her decisions falls squarely on her shoulders. In many ways, this responsibility can be both daunting and liberating. It forces her to acknowledge her vulnerabilities while simultaneously giving her the power to control her own destiny. The absence of a partner means there is no one to pass the responsibility to, no one to blame when things go awry. She must confront both her failures and successes with the knowledge that she is the sole architect of her life. This self-reliance isn't born out of necessity alone. It emerges from a deeper understanding of her own potential. A woman who walks alone is often forced to step outside her comfort zone, to take risks that would otherwise seem too overwhelming. Whether it's traveling solo, pursuing an ambitious career, or making life decisions that defy social expectations, she builds resilience through these acts of independence. With each challenge she overcomes, she strengthens her belief in herself, reinforcing the idea that she is capable, competent, and worthy of success on her own terms. Self-reliance also entails the ability to embrace solitude. In a world that values constant connectivity and social validation, solitude is often seen as a negative space, one filled with loneliness or emptiness. But for a woman walking alone, solitude becomes a sanctuary for reflection, self-discovery, and growth. It provides the quiet space necessary for her to tune into her own voice, to hear her own thoughts, and to make decisions without the external noise of societal pressures or the opinions of others. In solitude, she can become acquainted with her own desires, fears, and dreams without the distortion of a partner's influence. However, solitude does not mean isolation. Self-reliance does not equate to shutting oneself off from the world or avoiding relationships altogether. Rather, it means maintaining the ability to connect with others while retaining one's autonomy and independence. A woman who walks alone learns to cultivate healthy, balanced relationships based on mutual respect and shared values, not out of a need for validation or dependency. Her self-reliance allows her to enter relationships as a complete individual, not seeking to fulfill an emotional void, but instead bringing her full self into the connection. The path of self-reliance requires an ongoing process of self-discovery and self-assurance. It is a journey that is not always linear or easy. There will be moments of doubt, loneliness, and fear, emotions that any individual, regardless of gender, faces when walking a path alone. But through these struggles, a woman discovers her own strength. She learns to turn inward for validation, to recognize that her worth is intrinsic, and that she does not need the external world to define her. It is a continuous process of becoming comfortable with uncertainty, trusting in her ability to weather life's storms without the comfort of a partner's support. The power of self-reliance lies not in the absence of support, but in the recognition that one can stand firm, even in the face of adversity, without being swept away by the current. It is a power rooted in the knowledge that she does not need to rely on anyone else to determine her path. She is the captain of her own ship, steering through calm waters and turbulent seas with an unwavering belief that she has the ability to reach her destination. Through self-reliance, a woman who walks alone becomes a testament to the power of the human spirit. She proves that the true measure of one's strength lies not in the external circumstances or the presence of others, but in the quiet confidence and conviction with which she faces life on her own terms. Resilience is one of the most profound qualities that a woman develops when she chooses to walk alone. It is the inner fortitude that enables her to withstand the storms of life. Those moments when the world seems indifferent, when others might give up, and when every step forward feels like a battle. A woman who walks alone is no stranger to adversity. She is constantly confronted with the reality that life is unpredictable, that circumstances can change in the blink of an eye, and that things don't always go according to plan. And yet, despite these challenges, she persists. It is this ability to endure, to adapt, and to emerge stronger from hardship that defines her resilience. The societal pressure to conform to traditional roles, particularly for women, can be overwhelming. Expectations to marry, to have children, to fit within prescribed social norms often weigh heavily on a woman's psyche. In choosing to walk alone, she resists these pressures. And in doing so, she faces the challenge of navigating a world that doesn't always understand her decision. She must learn to deal with the judgment, the questions, and the subtle or overt criticisms that come from others. People often feel the need to tell her that she should be with someone, that something is missing from her life, as if her value is somehow incomplete without a partner. But it is precisely this resist societal expectations that builds her resilience. She learns to trust her own path, even when others cannot see or understand it. Resilience is not just about surviving. It's about thriving in the face of difficulty. For a woman who walks alone, life constantly presents challenges, be it the financial struggles of managing on one income, the emotional toll of loneliness, or the practical issues of handling everything by herself. Each obstacle she encounters is an opportunity to grow, to stretch beyond what she thought was possible. Resilience is the ability to take these challenges and transform them into stepping stones toward greater strength. Every time she overcomes an obstacle, she becomes a little more capable, a little more confident in her own abilities. Her resilience doesn't mean she's impervious to hardship or pain. Rather, it means that she has the capacity to face these hardships with a mindset of perseverance, knowing that the current moment does not define her future. One of the most powerful aspects of resilience is the ability to remain hopeful even in the face of adversity. A woman walking alone may experience moments of deep sadness or doubt, as loneliness can sometimes feel like an insurmountable weight. But resilience teaches her to see beyond the immediate discomfort, to recognize that difficult times are often temporary, and that the pain she feels today can be the catalyst for transformation tomorrow. She learns to sit with discomfort, to tolerate uncertainty, and to take each moment as it comes, knowing that she has the strength to endure and eventually overcome. Furthermore, resilience is built through self-compassion. The woman who walks alone must learn to be gentle with herself, especially when things don't go as planned. There will be times when she falters, when she feels weak, or when she wonders if she's made the right decision. In those moments, resilience requires that she treats herself with kindness, recognizing that failure is not an endpoint, but a necessary part of growth. Instead of succumbing to self-criticism or regret, she embraces these moments as opportunities to learn more about herself, to refine her approach, and to come back stronger. Resilience, then, is not a rigid, unyielding trait, but rather a flexible, adaptive quality that allows her to bend in the face of difficulty without breaking. Resilience also involves the ability to find meaning in the struggle. For a woman who walks alone, the trials she faces may seem endless at times, but it is through these struggles that she discovers her deepest strengths. Every challenge becomes a lesson, every hardship an invitation to grow. The ability to find meaning in adversity is one of the hallmarks of resilience. It allows her to see hardship not as a punishment, but as an essential part of her journey. She understands that her resilience is forged in the fires of struggle, and that her capacity to face adversity is what ultimately shapes her into a stronger, more capable person. A woman walking alone may also have to cultivate resilience in the face of societal misconceptions about her. Many people assume that loneliness equals weakness or that she is incomplete without a partner. But resilience is the ability to reject these stereotypes and remain confident in her decision to live life on her own terms. She doesn't need to explain herself to others or seek their approval. Instead, she stands firm in her understanding of her own strength, knowing that resilience comes not from conforming to the expectations of others, but from maintaining her own sense of purpose, regardless of what others think. Ultimately, resilience is about embracing the complexity of life. It is about recognizing that life is not always smooth, that there are moments of difficulty, and that these moments do not diminish her worth or ability to succeed. A woman who walks alone is constantly testing her own boundaries, confronting her fears, and challenging herself to be better, stronger, and more self-assured. Through each trial, she becomes more equipped to face the next challenge with even greater determination. In this way, resilience becomes not just a quality she possesses, but the very framework through which she experiences and grows through life. Independence is perhaps one of the most transformative and empowering aspects of a woman who walks alone. It is a state of being where she no longer looks to the external world for validation, approval, or direction. Instead, she becomes the architect of her own life, making choices that align with her values, desires, and ambitions, not dictated by the expectations of others or society. Independence is not about isolation, nor is it about rejecting relationships or connections. Rather, it is the ability to stand firmly on one's own, to chart a course that is uniquely her own, and to take full responsibility for the decisions she makes. For a woman walking alone, independence is an ongoing journey of self-discovery. It involves shedding the layers of dependency and expectation that society often places upon women. From a young age, girls are taught to seek approval, to be loved, and to find meaning through relationships, particularly romantic ones. The notion that a woman's worth is defined by her relationships, by her ability to fit into a traditional mold, is deeply ingrained in the collective consciousness. But for a woman who walks alone, the realization comes that true freedom lies in independence. She recognizes that her value is inherent and that she can create her own meaning, separate from the constraints of conventional norms. This realization is both liberating and intimidating. It requires courage to reject the idea that happiness is something that is found in the approval of others, particularly in romantic relationships, and instead to seek it within herself. Independence offers a woman the space to explore her own desires and ambitions without compromise. When a woman is not bound by the needs or expectations of a partner, she is free to pursue her own dreams with clarity and focus. This can manifest in a variety of ways, whether it is advancing in her career, traveling the world, or diving into creative pursuits. The freedom to choose her own path without concern for pleasing others or meeting prescribed expectations allows her to fully embrace her potential. She becomes the primary decision maker in her life, with the power to determine where she goes and how she gets there. But independence is not just about making decisions. It's about taking full responsibility for those decisions, knowing that the consequences, both positive and negative, are hers to bear. A woman who walks alone must become comfortable with the weight of her own choices. She cannot rely on someone else to make things better when things go wrong, nor can she pass off blame when things don't turn out as expected. Independence requires a high level of accountability, as she alone must navigate the complexities of life. Yet this accountability is also incredibly empowering. It means that she has control over her own destiny. She is not beholden to others to define her path, and the responsibility she carries is a testament to her own agency. With independence comes the opportunity for self-sufficiency. A woman walking alone learns to rely on herself, not just emotionally, but practically as well. Financial independence, for instance, becomes an essential pillar of this self-sufficiency. She becomes adept at managing her finances, making smart decisions that allow her to live comfortably without relying on a partner to share the load. Emotional independence is equally important. She learns to navigate her feelings, to manage her emotional well-being without seeking constant reassurance or validation from others. In doing so, she cultivates inner strength and resilience. She understands that her worth is not tied to someone else's approval, and her happiness is not contingent on another person's presence. Independence also fosters a deep sense of confidence. When a woman walks alone, she is constantly confronted with the need to trust herself and her decisions. She learns that she is capable of facing the unknown, of making difficult choices, and of handling challenges head-on. Over time, this builds an unshakable confidence in her ability to create and sustain the life she desires. There is a quiet power in independence, a sense of knowing that she can handle whatever comes her way. Moreover, independence offers a unique perspective on relationships. A woman who walks alone is free to cultivate relationships that are based on mutual respect, understanding, and shared values, not out of a need for validation or emotional fulfillment. Her relationships are not driven by a desire to fill a void, but by a genuine connection with others. Independence allows her to enter relationships as a complete individual, whole and self-sufficient, rather than seeking to complete herself through someone else. She does not need a partner to define her worth, and as a result, her relationships are more authentic, less dependent, and more balanced. In addition to personal growth, independence often fosters a sense of adventure. A woman walking alone has the freedom to explore the world on her own terms. She can travel to new places, pursue new interests, and experience life without being limited by the desires or schedules of others. This freedom to explore, to follow her own curiosities, is a gift that many women who live in relationships may never experience to the same extent. It is an opportunity to engage with the world in a way that is unencumbered, unrestricted by the need to accommodate anyone else's wants or needs. Ultimately, independence for a woman who walks alone is not a denial of connection or love. Rather, it is the foundation from which she can build deeper, more meaningful relationships. It is the ability to live fully as herself without compromise and to embrace the richness of life with confidence and grace. It allows her to live authentically in alignment with her own values, desires, and goals without being tethered by the constraints that society often places on women. Independence is not just a way of living, it is a way of being. One that provides the freedom to be exactly who she is, on her own terms, at every step of the journey. Courage and vulnerability is one of the most powerful qualities that a woman who walks alone embodies. It is the strength to remain open and authentic, even in the face of uncertainty and emotional risk. When a woman chooses to walk alone, she exposes herself to the world in ways that are often misunderstood or undervalued. She faces the challenge of navigating life without the safety net that many associate with romantic partnerships. There is no one to cushion her from the harshness of the world, no one to protect her from the rawness of human experience. Yet in this vulnerability, she demonstrates a remarkable courage. The courage to live fully, to embrace life as it is, and to face her fears head-on without the facade of invulnerability. In the traditional sense, is often seen as a weakness. It is viewed as a state of exposure, a condition in which one is susceptible to harm or rejection. However, for a woman who walks alone, vulnerability is not weakness. It is an essential part of her strength. To be vulnerable is to be open to the full spectrum of human experience, both the joy and the pain, the connection and the solitude, the triumphs and the failures. It is in this openness that she finds her greatest power. For only through vulnerability can she truly connect with others, with herself, and with the world around her. Only by being vulnerable can she experience the depth of her emotions, her desires, and her true self. Walking alone means that she faces the world without the constant reassurance of a partner's presence. She may feel loneliness at times, or the weight of social expectations that she should be with someone. There is a certain exposure in being alone, an emotional rawness that can be difficult to embrace. Yet, in choosing to remain open to the world, she shows that she is willing to experience life in its fullness, without the armor of protection that many relationships offer. She allows herself to be seen, to be known, and to face the challenges that come with it. This vulnerability is not a sign of fragility. It is a testament to her ability to stand in the face of the unknown and say, "I am here." Courage and vulnerability also means that she is willing to confront the fear of rejection, judgment, and societal pressure. Society often tells women that they must be in a relationship to be complete, or that their worth is somehow diminished if they are not partnered. By walking alone, she challenges these narratives and refuses to conform to the expectations placed on her. This courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. It is the bravery to be different, to be herself, and to not hide behind the conventional idea of what a woman's life should look like. Moreover, courage and vulnerability requires emotional transparency. A woman who walks alone must often face her own emotions without the distraction or comfort of a partner. She must sit with her sadness, her fear, her joy, and her uncertainty without someone to share it with immediately. It is in these moments of emotional solitude that her true strength is forged. She learns to process her feelings independently, to rely on her inner resources to find peace and understanding. This emotional independence can be one of the most liberating aspects of walking alone. Rather than seeking to fill emotional gaps with the presence of another person, she learns to fill herself from within, discovering that she is enough regardless of her relationship status. The courage to remain vulnerable also means that she is open to new experiences, new relationships, and new connections without the fear of being hurt or disappointed. She allows herself to love, to care, and to connect with others, knowing that the potential for pain exists, but choosing to embrace it anyway. In doing so, she demonstrates a remarkable strength of spirit, one that does not shut down in the face of vulnerability, but rather remains open to the possibility of connection, even in the face of risk. She understands that vulnerability, though it may lead to heartbreak or disappointment, is also the gateway to deep, meaningful relationships. Without vulnerability, there can be no real connection. Without the willingness to open oneself up to the world, one cannot experience the richness of human interaction and intimacy. For a woman who walks alone, courage and vulnerability is also about self-acceptance. It is about acknowledging that she does not need to conform to anyone else's expectations, and that her life in all its complexity is valid and valuable. Vulnerability requires the courage to be authentic in a world that often values perfection or conformity. She chooses not to hide behind a mask of what she thinks others want her to be, but to reveal her true self, with all its flaws and imperfections. In doing so, she sets an example for others, showing them that it is possible to live authentically, to embrace one's own truth, and to find strength in that authenticity. In essence, the courage of a woman who walks alone lies in her willingness to be vulnerable with herself and with the world. She chooses to experience life fully, to face both the beauty and the pain with an open heart, and to embrace her own emotional complexity. In doing so, she embodies a strength that comes not from shielding herself from the world, but from standing fully in it, exposed and open, knowing that this vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but the foundation of her greatest power. She understands that vulnerability is not a flaw, but a key to personal growth, connection, and emotional freedom. Through her courage and vulnerability, she demonstrates that it is possible to live bravely, to love without fear, and to face life's challenges with unwavering strength. Rejection of societal norms is a defining characteristic of a woman who walks alone. It is the act of stepping outside the confines of conventional expectations and embracing a path that is uniquely hers, even when it goes against the grain of what society expects or demands. From a young age, women are often socialized to adhere to specific roles that are defined by marriage, motherhood, and a certain vision of what it means to be fulfilled. These societal norms are deeply ingrained, shaping how women see themselves and how they believe they should live their lives. To walk alone as a woman is, in many ways, an act of defiance, one that challenges the status quo and asks fundamental questions about what it truly means to live a meaningful life. Society has long held the belief that a woman's happiness and fulfillment are largely tied to her relationships, particularly her romantic one. The ideal of marriage and family has been sold as the ultimate goal for women. And in many cultures, there is still an unspoken assumption that a woman's life is somehow incomplete without a husband or partner. But for a woman who chooses to walk alone, this norm is not a given. She rejects the idea that her worth is measured by her relationship status, or that her life is incomplete without someone else by her side. She challenges the narrative that fulfillment can only be found within the confines of traditional relationships. This rejection of societal norms is not a denial of love or companionship, but a rejection of the pressure to conform to a specific mold of what a woman's life should look like. To live outside of these norms requires immense courage. Immense courage. It means that she must face the judgment of others who may view her choices as unconventional or even misguided. There will be whispers, raised eyebrows, and unsolicited opinions about her decision to walk alone. People may ask her why she isn't married yet, why she doesn't have children, or what's wrong with her. In the face of these questions, she must find the strength to stand firm in her convictions, to trust that her path is her own, and that it does not need to be validated by others. She rejects the idea that she must fit into a predefined box of what it means to be a woman, and instead embraces the freedom to define herself on her own terms. The rejection of societal norms also means rejecting the notion that a woman must prioritize others over herself. In a world that often places the needs of others, be it a partner, children, or family, above her own, a woman who walks alone chooses to prioritize her own well-being, growth, and happiness. She is not beholden to anyone else's agenda. She does not sacrifice her own needs or desires for the sake of fitting into the traditional framework of relationships. Instead, she nurtures her own sense of self, dedicating time and energy to her personal development, career passions, and goals. This rejection of self-sacrifice for the sake of pleasing others is a radical act in a society that often expects women to put others first. Living outside of societal norms can also be a deeply liberating experience. A woman who walks alone is not tied to the expectations of others. She is free to explore life in a way that is authentic to her, unburdened by the need to seek approval or live up to someone else's vision of success. She is not pressured to settle into a relationship because it is expected of her, nor does she feel the weight of societal judgment for choosing a different path. This freedom allows her to be fully present in her own life, to make decisions that align with her values and desires, and to build a future that is shaped by her own choices rather than by external pressures. In rejecting societal norms, a woman also opens herself to the possibility of redefining what it means to be a woman in today's world. She no longer has to conform to outdated ideals that limit her potential or define her worth based on her relationship status. Instead, she can embrace a new vision of womanhood, one that is not confined to traditional roles but is expansive, inclusive, and empowering. She can be a woman who is successful in her career, who is passionate about her interests, who is dedicated to her personal growth, and who chooses relationships that are meaningful, not out of obligation, but out of genuine connection. In rejecting societal expectations, she frees herself from the constraints that have long dictated what women should be and opens up new possibilities for what they can become. This rejection is not always an easy one. It requires that a woman confront her own fears and insecurities, as well as the judgment of others. It demands that she find the strength to stand alone, knowing that her path may not always be understood or accepted by those around her. But it is precisely in this rejection that she discovers her own power. She learns that she does not need to conform to be worthy, and that her worth is intrinsic, not dependent on the approval of society or others. The rejection of societal norms also allows her to create her own definition of happiness and success. She no longer measures her life against the expectations of others, but instead chooses what feels right for her. This might mean a different kind of family structure, a non-traditional career, or life lived independently. What matters is that she is living in alignment with her own truth, and that her choices reflect her deepest desires and values. In this way, the rejection of societal norms becomes a powerful form of self-expression, a declaration that she is the author of her own story, and that her life will be shaped by her own desires, not the expectations of others. In rejecting these norms, a woman who walks alone challenges the status quo and paves the way for other women to do the same. She becomes a living example of what it means to live authentically, to embrace one's own path, and to reject the pressures that society places on women. Her life, though unconventional, is a testament to the power of living on one's own terms. Self-awareness is one of the most important and transformative aspects of a woman who walks alone. It is the deep understanding of her own thoughts, emotions, strengths, weaknesses, and desires. This kind of self-awareness is not something that comes naturally to everyone. It requires time, reflection, and a willingness to confront the truths of who she is, even when those truths are difficult to accept. A woman who walks alone must learn to navigate the complexities of her own mind and soul without the constant influence or distraction of a partner's presence. She must become her own guide, finding clarity within herself rather than seeking it from external sources. To walk alone is to face the sometimes uncomfortable silence of one's own thoughts. When there is no one else to turn to, no one else to lean on, a woman is forced to rely on her own inner resources. She learns to listen to herself, to discern her own needs and desires, to understand her motivations and intentions. This self-awareness becomes her compass, guiding her through life's challenges and uncertainties. It allows her to make decisions that are true to her, not based on the desires or expectations of others. It is a powerful tool that empowers her to live authentically, to align her actions with her inner truth. Self-awareness also involves an ongoing process of self-reflection. A woman who walks alone must be willing to take a hard look at herself, to examine her choices, her behaviors, and her patterns of thinking. This can be a difficult process because it requires vulnerability, the willingness to confront her own flaws and mistakes without judgment. It means accepting that she is not perfect, that she has weaknesses, and that she may not always get things right. But in embracing this reality, she becomes more resilient, more self-compassionate, and more capable of growth. Self-awareness is not about perfection. It is about understanding and accepting who she is in all her complexity. Through self-awareness, a woman becomes attuned to her emotions and the way they influence her action. She recognizes when she is acting out of fear, insecurity, or anger, and she gains the tools to navigate these emotions in a constructive way. This emotional intelligence is vital when walking alone, as it allows her to process her feelings independently, without relying on someone else to manage her emotional state. She learns to regulate her emotions, to acknowledge them without letting them control her, and to respond to situations with thoughtfulness and clarity. This emotional self-regulation is a form of inner strength that allows her to remain grounded, even in the face of stress or turmoil. Self-awareness also means knowing her boundaries and understanding when to say no. A woman who walks alone has the freedom to set her own limits without concern for accommodating someone else's needs. She knows what she is willing to tolerate and what she is not, and she makes choices based on this understanding. This sense of autonomy and setting boundaries is a crucial aspect of self-respect. It allows her to protect her emotional, mental, and physical well-being, ensuring that she does not overextend herself for the sake of others. This boundary setting is an act of self-care, and it is an essential skill for navigating the complexities of life, particularly when walking alone. Self-awareness also means taking ownership of one's life and decisions. When a woman walks alone, she cannot shift blame or responsibility onto someone else. She must acknowledge her role in the choices she makes, both the good and the bad. This sense of accountability is empowering because it places her in control of her own narrative. She understands that she is the one who creates the course of her life, and that her decisions have consequences, both positive and negative. With this ownership comes a sense of agency and empowerment. It allows her to make choices with confidence, knowing that she is responsible for her own happiness and fulfillment. One of the most profound aspects of self-awareness is the ability to listen to one's intuition. A woman who walks alone learns to trust the quiet voice within, the gut feeling that guides her decisions and actions. She becomes in tune with her inner wisdom, and over time she learns to differentiate between what her mind tells her she should do and what her heart and intuition tell her is right. This intuitive wisdom is invaluable, particularly when navigating situations that are ambiguous or uncertain. It allows her to make decisions that feel aligned with her true self, rather than simply following logic or the advice of others. Trusting her intuition requires a deep level of self-awareness and the confidence to act on what feels right for her, regardless of external pressures or expectations. Self-awareness also involves being attuned to one's values and passions. A woman who walks alone has the freedom to explore what truly matters to her without the influence of a partner's desires or priorities. She can focus on what brings her joy, fulfillment, and purpose, and she has the space to pursue these things fully. This self-awareness allows her to live a life that is congruent with her deepest values, rather than simply adhering to the expectations or desires of others. It helps her to create a life that feels meaningful and authentic, one that is built on her own sense of purpose and direction. Ultimately, self-awareness is a tool that enables a woman who walks alone to live with greater clarity, confidence, and authenticity. It helps her to navigate life's complexities with a sense of purpose and self-respect. By becoming deeply attuned to herself, her thoughts, emotions, needs, desires, and boundaries, she is able to create a life that is uniquely hers, one that reflects her truest self. Self-awareness empowers her to make decisions that align with her values and to move through the world with a sense of direction and confidence, knowing that she is the one in control of her journey. It is through this deep understanding of herself that she finds the strength to live authentically and with purpose, even when walking alone.